This is the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom Fay and Mike Whiting. We've gone down to Port Adelaide, sadly. Haven't come away with the 4 points, but it was a competitive win. Sadly, though, no finals this year, Mike.
The dream's over, Dom, isn't it? We've clung on to it for the last 2 or 3 weeks, the mathematic possibility of being able to sneak into the finals, but that's all gone now. But I don't think you can be too disappointed in that performance. The damage as far as the finals goes was done in the first month of the year, and the Lions have sort of been chasing their tail since then. But performance on the weekend was really good. I mean, we spoke on here last week about being competitive and being in the match from the first quarter and not being blown away and staying in it right till the death, which is exactly what the Lions did. And they just lacked a bit of polish, really, didn't they?
Like Pierce Hanley.
Like Pierce Hanley. It was an untimely break of his hand, wasn't it? Because they missed him, and obviously Blackie's been out. So those guys with a little bit of class, a couple of those guys been missing, just might have made the difference. But just effort-wise and competitiveness, you couldn't really ask for more.
No, it was a real workmanship kind of performance. I did notice, though, like we did speak on the show last week about how much Port Adelaide run for each other and their work ethic. And you did notice that because there seemed to be 2 or 3 more Port Adelaide players at almost every contest than Lions players, simply because they were running so hard to get to each and every one. And that was quite frustrating as the day unfolded.
Yeah, they're very good at that. As you said, that's what we sort of identified last week. And I guess people that hadn't seen much of them wouldn't have realised that this year, but they do work incredibly hard and probably taught the Lions a little bit of a lesson in that on the weekend. Brisbane stuck in there and were competitive and scrapped, and when they were at the contest, they were ferocious. I thought the Lions' attack on the ball and the pressure was as good as any match this year, almost as good as the Essendon match once they were at the contest, but it was, like you said, it was just getting the volume of numbers to get there in the first place to make it a real even matchup.
I thought Rocky had another really good game.
Yeah.
Maloney had some good patches. Louis played very well. Patfull was very impressive as well. But I don't think it was really a game for standouts on either side, to be honest.
No, I agree with you. Better players for Brisbane there. I thought Patfull was terrific, and it was great to see him contesting, going for his grabs again. He got, I think he had 3 or 4 contested marks and backing himself in. There was a lot of ball in that back half, so I thought him and Justin Clark and Matty Maguire did quite well under a lot of pressure. Elliot Yeo did quite well. Made 1 or 2 mistakes, but I think you don't mind guys making mistakes if they're taking the game on, and he falls into that category. And those midfielders you mentioned, Rockcliffe there, I thought was terrific. Again, Jack Redden, again probably finding a little bit of form that he was lacking earlier in the season. So quite an even contribution, as you said, without a heap of standouts.
Yeah, we just need Daniel Rich to start breaking the tag so he can really stand up, because our other 2 Rs are firing at the moment, and we need Richie to join them so we can really have a potent midfield, I think, and hopefully this week against St Kilda is where that can happen. Yeah,
not many touches for Richie, but when he gets them, they count, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
He set up the goal for Dan Merritt when he squared it back into the goal square. He set up another one for Jack Crisp, I think it was, with a little hand pass over the top. So when he gets it, he does something with it. But yeah, I guess you'd like to see him get it a little bit more. But that's again the problem without having Pierce Hanley and Simon Black. Everyone knows that you've got to go to Daniel Rich and probably Brent Maloney. So there's a lot of focus on 1 or 2 guys now, and he does have to figure out a way, and the Lions have to figure out a way for him to get past that. And it's not going to get any easier this week. St Kilda have got run with and shut down players as well, so he's going to have to figure out a way before Saturday night to get past that.
I'm living for the day that we see Daniel Rich with 30-plus touches. I think that will be an exceptional game. Before we move on from the Port game, though, we should touch on the free kicks. Now, for not the first time this season, we were heavily outnumbered in the free kick department.
Caned, I think you could say, Dom.
Yeah.
Caned.
That's fair to say. 22-11. They had double the amount of free kicks as us. And it's fair to say that while we may be a bit of a reckless side at times, a lot of the calls on Sunday were a bit dubious, and we don't want to sit here and whinge about the umpires because, honestly, you never use that as an excuse for losing a game. But it does seem that we have been on the end of some inconsistent umpiring for a few years now.
I hate the umpires chat as well, but it has been going on for a little while, and Michael Voss put it on the table a few weeks ago, and it just came up again on the weekend. That's 7 free kick counts in a row the Lions have lost, and it didn't cost them the match on the weekend, and we're not pretending that was the case, and I'm sure the Lions players certainly aren't pretending that's the case, but there was a lot of inconsistency with deliberate out of bounds, high contact,
holding the
ball. I mean, just some really frustrating decisions, not only for the fans, but the players. I know the fans are in their lounge rooms throwing things at the TV, but for the players, it's just as bad. And I think they genuinely want to figure out what the problem is. They're not just throwing their hands up and crying and whinging. They want to figure out what the problem is. So I guess there's going to be more chats with Jeff Geeshan, the umpire's boss, and trying to figure out how to get to the bottom of it, because statistically the Lions are the worst discipline, if that's even a phrase, team in the competition. They concede the most amount of free kicks in the competition, so that's putting you on the back foot before you even start. And when these games are decided by a goal or two, they can come back and bite you.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to the St Kilda game, though. The last time we beat St Kilda, interesting fact. Now, you may think this is quite an easy win, but the last time we beat them was round 9, 2008. Another interesting fact, only Adcock, Black, Brown, Merritt, McGrath and Patfull played that afternoon, who are still on our list. So that's only 6. And if Black misses, which it looks like he will, that means there will only be 5 people out there who played in our last victory against St Kilda. So it's not exactly the easy win some might think it is.
No, and I think just to add to that, the last 3 or possibly 4 of those matches have been at the Gabba. They've been tight. They've all been within 3 goals. And in fairness, I mean, 2 and 3 years ago, they had teams in grand finals and super quality teams that have probably tailed off a bit. But last year, I remember the match quite well last year when the Lions were still slightly in contention to make the finals. There was that flicker of hope, and the Saints came up here and beat them and squashed that hope. And they've gone downhill again this year, St Kilda. But for Brisbane, with the finals out of the equation now, they just can't fall asleep. Like, you don't want the season to fall away. It's a cliche, and I hate hearing it when I'm a journalist, but there's still so much to play for, and they have to believe that, because there's not only their season as a team, there's some players are playing for their careers, obviously, in the next 5 weeks, and playing for new contracts, and we all know Vossi's coaching situation. So there's a lot to play for, and they have to believe that and go out there and play just as hard as they did last weekend against the Saints.
I'm hoping we'll see a few of the younger players who haven't been playing for a while get a chance this weekend. I'm talking the likes of...
Hang on, let me guess.
Carnesis? Was that going to be a guess?
Paddy Kay was going to be one of my guesses, but I think there's a few people that are in your boat there, yeah.
Well, Carnesis, Pollock, Lyle, even someone like a Cal Bartlett, Jesse O'Brien, even Todd Banfield, and Aaron Cornelius.
This is an interesting... Sorry to cut you off there, Dom. This is an interesting little dilemma for Vossi, isn't it? You still want to win matches and finish your season strongly, particularly with a young list at the moment, as 2/3 of that playing list is quite young, versus do we blood some of those, not blood them, but see what they've got in the next 5 weeks? Do you want to potentially sacrifice a better performance or a win at an extreme cost for the sake of seeing what these guys can do? Or how do you balance it? I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it?
I don't think that a few ins will really risk that. I think if you chuck in the whole reserve side, then you might be at risk. But I think some of these players, particularly Carnesis, Pollocks, Banfields, and even Cornelius, and O'Brien's for that matter, these are players coming out of contract. So you really do need to see, firstly, what they can do in terms of whether or not you want to offer them another contract, and secondly, what you want that contract to be. Do you want it to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years? How much money do you want to pay? So I find it must be a really hard job for someone like Rob Kerr sitting there at the moment thinking, what can we offer someone like a Patrick Carnesis to entice him to stay in Brisbane, when we don't even know what he can do at senior level because he hasn't been given a game there for a long time.
And then versus the other side of the argument, what do you do with players like a Ryan Lester, a Sam Doherty, and Elliot Yeo, guys in their second and third year that have played a few games, probably want to play a few more to finish off their season? Are they the ones that you rest into the reserves to give these guys a chance? Or it's a very tricky balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it definitely
We're
is.
probably not answering our own question there.
I have maintained for some time that I am a bit worried about the likes of Carnesis and Pollock, 2 players who have had probably homesickness rumours around them at times. Now, I don't believe that homesickness is as big an issue as many make out. I think it's largely overhyped. But there are 2 players who are now in their 3rd year at the club. Neither of them have played consistent senior footy. And you just have to wonder, they're talented players, and you have to wonder if maybe clubs will come knocking at the end of the year, and the idea of senior footy might entice them, and we could end up losing them and regretting it down the track.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I'd like to have seen them have... I mean, in Pollock's case, he's had injury worries this year, so I'll excuse him from this conversation a little bit, but I would like to have seen both of them play a bit more footy this year, because I'm a bit in the same camp. I think they were... Pollock especially, and to a lesser extent Carnesis, have been very high draft picks and guys that you'd like to build the future of the club on, or them to be part of that future, or at least see what they've got. I mean, we want to see what they've got, don't we? Like, if they can't cut it, they can't cut it, but you'd like to see that at a senior level. So I tend to be in your camp. I'd like to see them get a run, because they do have 3 years in their legs now, and I also watch the Gold Coast Suns very closely down the road, and those midfielders are in their third year, and we can see what those guys can do. The Dion Prestias of the world and the David Swallows and these sort of fellows, and just what they can do in 3 years. So these Lions guys are sort of getting left behind with lack of opportunity. So it is a tricky balance though. So I'm not pretending we've got the answers here.
Yeah, I think with someone like Patrick Karnezis, he had such a promising pre-season. Everyone thought he's going to nail down his spot, and it must have been really frustrating for him this year to be. I think he's only played the 3 or 4 games, so he's someone who you'd think has done enough in the reserves to earn a spot. The tough thing for all of them, though, is that the reserves didn't play last weekend. So despite the fact the seniors have lost, none of them had a game last weekend to say, hey, pick me. And, I mean, you'd assume, obviously you don't want to assume too heavily, but you'd think we should get over the line against St Kilda on Saturday, which might make it even harder for players to force their way into a winning side. So it's just a bit of a tough situation for a lot of them right now.
It is, and also being so competitive against Port Adelaide last week in a tough environment on the road, and being in that match up until basically the last 2 minutes. I mean, it's not really sort of warranting of dropping a bunch of players. So it's a difficult situation, and as I said before, I tend to agree with you. I'd like to see a couple of them get a chance, and I guess that's the man management that the coaching panel have to figure out. But we would like to see something from these guys, and just because I don't think the fans or anyone else really knows what they can do, and should they be recontracted and extended at the club, because genuinely a lot of us don't know exactly what they're capable of at the top level.
Yeah, there's a big disparity between the levels of the NEAFL and the AFL, so as much as it is easy to be enticed by what players do at NEAFL level, you really do need to see what they can do at the higher level to think about, as I said before, how long you want to give them a contract for, how much you want to pay them on that contract. And it's just a really tough balancing act that let's just say I'm not envious of the selection committee over the next few weeks.
Yeah, they've got some tough decisions, and obviously as the season draws to a conclusion and we've got no finals to talk about now, your attention does start to turn towards that list management and just who might get recontracted, who might miss out, who might look to be traded, and it's an interesting time of year, that's for sure. For us as the media and the spectators and the fans, it's very interesting, but for the players it is as well. I mean, they're left in, some of them are left in a little bit of limbo. I mean, we don't know everything that goes on there. Some of them might be a ways down the track with contract talks and we don't know about it, but interesting time of year for sure.
We will get Rob Kerr to join us on the Fancast sometime in the coming few weeks, hopefully before the end of the season, to chat about a few of these uncontracted players. That is all we've got time for on the Fancast today, though. Stay tuned to the Lions website, because later in the week we're going to have a chat with Brent Staker. We've been trying to get him for a few weeks now. We've finally got Stakes. We're going to talk to him about his recovery and how he's found his form this year. So that's later in the week. That's the Fancast for now, though. Bye.
See ya.